All right, Mishlei 1421, which we are learning on its own, but also connected to yesterday after we do this. Okay, so we got Baz L'Riehu Chote U'Mechonin, and then we got a Kri Ksiv. Mechonin, the Ksiv is Aniyim, and the Kri is Anavim. Ashrav. How do you translate it?
I don't remember what Baz is, but
yeah, Buzz is one who scorns or derides. It's like bizui is like the opposite of kavod, right? Yeah.
Sins.
Yeah, one who scorns his fellow sins.
Is this like cloning? Isn't like cloning hadat?
Yeah.
And one who gives.
Yeah. What's the not complication? What's the connotation of like what type of giving is cloning, as opposed to is it like no saying? Like matnas chinam or chen.
Oh, free.
Yeah. So one who gives freely or gives graciously, people say, but freely is fine. To anavim, let's go with anavim for
now. To humble.
To the humble, and then obviously in parentheses is the poor. Ashrav
Will make him wealthy, or
that's
will become wealthy.
The ashir wealthy is with an ayin. This is like ashrei yoshvei v'secha.
Oh, like will make him happy.
Yeah, is so this is the difficult to translate term, right? So ashrei either means happy or praiseworthy, right? That's the intrinsic ambiguity there. Okay, so that's the translation. Sadigon does something strange. V'habaz. Okay, so he says v'habaz l're'ehu kach huchote, and one who scorns his fellow. I'm going to actually say disparages because I think scorn can mean like in your mind, but disparages is much more accurate here. One who disparages his fellow thusly, hu hachote, he is the sinner. V'hachonin es ha'aniyim ashrav, but one who gives graciously to the poor is happy / praiseworthy. So Kafif points out something that I did not know. Well, first of all, he says Tikum aniyim anavim. So he translates the word aniyim. He translates anavim as aniyim lefi haksiv v'lo lefi hakriya kamin hagavim komus rabim. Okay, so he says that Sadigon translates it with the ksiv, not with the kri, as he does in many places. So I was not aware that Sadigon does that. So that just sheds interesting light on like how we approach the kri ksivs. Okay. I don't know what to make of it in terms of like methodologically, but just apparently that's the thing he does. Okay. Targum Ksuvim says Chatia Sha'it L'Chavre. A sinner disparages his friend, Uman Diyahev Lemiskana Tuvohi, and one who gives to the poor, it is good for him. Okay, so I don't think that's any chiddush there. I just want to show it because the Targum goes with the also goes with the ksiv. Okay, so miskana means the poor. Okay, so very strange. Less strange that the Targum goes with it because the Targum is some say that the Targum on Ksuvim is based on like the pre-Masoretic text, but again, it just shows the legitimacy of it. And again, this is an argument for Alter that when Alter relies on other versions of the text that are not Masoretic, that's not intrinsically a bad thing because our meforshim do that as well sometimes. It's just that when you're doing it halakhically, that's a different story. Okay, in case for those who missed my Alter soapbox after January. Or at the end in January. Okay, our scroll says, he who shames his friend is a sinner, but praiseworthy is one who's gracious to the humble. Yeah, okay, fine. So our scroll keeps the Kri. Rav Hirsch says, he who despises his neighbor sins, but one who's gracious to the humble strives towards happiness. This is a Hirschian translation of Ashrei. I think he always says Ashrei, it strives towards happiness, because the word Ashrei, or the word, we had this actually in 1410. No, not 1410. 1415. Pesi believes everything, but a cunning person understands his every step. So Ashar, what's the shorish here? Shorish is Ashur, means to step. Okay. So Refersh, I think, holds that both those words are related. Okay. But we're gonna go ahead and ignore that for now. Alder says one who scorns his neighbor offends. Chote meaning like not offends like in cancel culture offense, but like commits an offense. But he who is happy pities the poor. That's interesting. Chonin is pity. Okay, I'm not a fan of that. Alrighty, so let's go here, and what I think we'll do. Let's just see here. Yeah, I guess what we'll do is we will just preserve the Greek ksiv in ours, and then we'll since we know that it's legitimate to interpret the ksiv, then we'll keep that open. And you got to remember also actually, I'm just going to write this as a question here. So does this follow the kri, which is humble, or the ksiv, okay, poor, or both? Okay, and both is the way that the Radak and the Rabbeinu Yonah tend to approach the kri ksivs, is that you're supposed to read them as like two it's like a self-commentary on the same pasuk. It's like the same
yeah. And just to quickly clarify, with Sadigon, he's saying that the person who is scorned is the sinner.
No, the person who scorns his fellow is the sinner.
Is the sinner?
Yeah.
So what's he adding in terms of?
So he's adding a couple things. One is the word "and," which our pasuk doesn't have. Second is kach, so one who scorns his fellow thusly. Okay, so the combination of both of those seems to point to the previous pasuk, right? So just to read the previous pasuk, which I put up here, gam l're'ehu yisane rash ve'ove asher rabim. Also, to his fellow, a poor person will be hated, and the lovers of the rich are many. So Rabbeinu Yonah kind of alluded to this. Rabbeinu Yonah said that this is talking about how the rich people will look down on the poor people. So it sounds like we didn't read Sadi on his commentary yesterday, but it sounds like he's saying if he does this, if the rich person does this to the poor person, then the rich person is the scorner. And then the main thing that he does is he says, the main chiddush of Targum Sadigon is he goes with the ksiv instead of the kri.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Isaac.
Why would you like Mechonin as gives freely?
That's how Sean said it, but I like graciously. Is that better?
Where's the giving? Is it
Mechonin.
Like just being like passionate or like?
Let's check. Because chonin, let's say ata chonin la'adam da'as means to give graciously, to show favor, to be gracious. Yeah, you could say show favor. Yeah. Let's say.
I feel like giving freely.
Yeah.
It sounds much more like tzedakah specifically.
Right, and I think the other reason I'm going that direction is because it's talking about how you relate to the poor.
Or the humble.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we have ample reason to think that this is talking about the poor because the previous pasuk was talking about it. This pasuk was talking about it. Yeah. So I guess one who, well, let's put it this way: one who is gracious, that'll preserve the ambiguity. Okay. Yeah. To the humble is praiseworthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's just convert that into a question.
Yeah.
What does mechonin mean in this context? Okay. Is this merely an attitude or also an action?
Are buzz and mechonin opposite?
Yeah.
And if so, how?
Okay, so let's just extend that question to the whole pasuk. What is the relationship between the two halves? Okay, is buzz the opposite of mechonin? Okay, is re'ehu somehow the opposite of anavim slash aniyim? Is chote the opposite of ashrei? Yeah, Isaiah.
Yeah, what does it mean to scorn your fellow?
Yeah.
I would also ask who's scorning.
What are the possibilities?
Well, either it's in line with.
Oh, you mean from the previous pasuk? Yeah, right. Okay.
Meaning that it's the usher or somebody,
right.
or it could be just anybody.
Okay, so
talking about
right.
like that.
So what does buzz mean in this context? Is this like in attitude or also in action? And then who is doing the scorning? Anyone, or specifically the person described in the previous pasuk? Yeah. And then likewise, we had this question yesterday. Who is Re'ehu? Any fellow person, or specifically someone who is like the scorner? Yeah, that's what makes it difficult to say, not difficult, but it's a strike against the connecting of the two pesukim, because yeah, I guess it depends how you learn the last pasuk. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you line up the halves.
Yeah.
Then.
Gal Re'ehu Yisane Rash Baz Re'ehu Chote.
Yeah.
Ove Ashir Rabim Machonin and Nabim Ashraf. Yeah. That's an interesting result.
Yeah. Like the Russia's fellows scored him, and someone who's doing the fellow poor person who's doing that is a chute.
Right.
And then the usher has many loved ones, but if he's compassionate to enough, then or aniyim, then he's praised.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, you can definitely see why the meforshim pair these. Yeah, Isaiah.
What is the negative consequence of being a chote in this pasuk?
Right. What is the consequence of being a chote? Right. Especially as contrasted with ashrei, which ashrei is both a value judgment and a beneficial outcome, like depending on how you read it, which we can go ahead and ask here also. What does ashrav mean in this context? I guess happy, praiseworthy, or the combo. Yeah, and just to insert the pshat, or my working pshat of ashrei, is happy because of your virtues. That's my understanding of it, meaning that there's happiness like due to your circumstances, like being in felicitous circumstances, but then there's also like a certain type of happiness that comes about through living in line with good midos. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also ask, what's the Hav meaning here?
Yeah.
I mean, presumably one who disparages his fellows.
Oh, right.
Why are you telling me that?
Where's the Havmina of the first half? Obviously, disparaging your fellow is a sin. Yeah, move this up there. Yeah, that's a good question. I also want to say, actually, maybe this is partially an answer, but I'm going to ask it as a separate question. So, like, what is the implication of chote? Because what is the implication of chote in general?
That he missed.
Yeah. So chata means to miss the mark, the target. Okay, which generally implies an unintentional sin. Okay. But buzz l're'ehu sounds intentional, so is this being used? I mean, obviously you can use chote as a general like a sin, but it is strange that it says chote, It's also not and I'm curious how often it talks about chait in Mishlei. I sense it's not a lot, but I can think of one pasuk that we've done. Just skimming through, and it talks about chatayim a lot, but let's just see how many times it says this in Mishlei. Yeah, 6. That's not very many. Chote chomis nafsho, choti, one who sins against chachmas, does violence to his soul. This is the one that we did. Oh, not we. Monday night we. Hein tzadik ba'aretz yishulam ki rasha v'chote. A tzadik will be given reward in this in the land, even rasha and a sinner. Tov yanchil b'nei banim v'tzafun l'tzadik chel chote. It is good, or the good person bequeaths to his grandchildren, and the wealth of the sinner is hidden away for the tzaddik. Then there's our pasuk. Then gam below das nefesh lo tov. We also did this. Also without knowledge, a soul is not good, and one who's quick on his feet is a sinner. And then naham kakfir emas melech mis abro chote nafsho. One who roars. The fear of the king. The fear of the king is like the roar of a young lion. One who angers him sins against his soul. Yeah, so it is interesting here that like several of these are, the first one and the last one are more like actually I'm not sure, whatever. I can't come up with theory, but it's not a big term in Mishnah. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay. All right. I feel like those are the main questions. You have an approach. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So at least maybe the start of an approach.
Yeah.
I do want to start with that Havamina.
Yeah.
Which is, why would a person think that disparaging their fellow would be appropriate? Yeah. So,
or at least not be inappropriate.
What?
Or at least not be inappropriate, right? Yeah.
So, maybe using past pasuk.
Yeah.
So I'm inputting that through the fellow is a poor person.
Okay.
And he's disparaging the poor person.
Right. So meaning that the disparager and the disparagee are both poor people?
Not necessarily.
Oh, no, okay.
Which one's the poor person?
The poor person is the person being disparaged.
Okay.
And I think that there's sometimes like this tough love attitude that people have with the poor.
Yeah.
Especially when they interact with wealthy people.
Yeah.
Or they're used to wealth and they don't have the perspective of what it means to be a poor person.
Yeah.
And so they look down on the poor person and they think that if I do this tough love with the poor person, then it will result in a positive.
Yeah.
And so this is warning him against.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
So this is not buzz out of hatred. This is buzz out of an attempt to be mechonin.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. So I like that because it is it's connected to the second algorithm. So let me just list this for a second first. So Sean is saying that the Havamina is that a person might behave in a disparaging way towards the poor in a misguided effort to be mechonin him. Okay, as if believing that this is going to help. Okay, an example being tough love. Can we just come up with another like a more particular example of this, like a real world case, just so I can make sure we're on the same intuition wavelength?
And this might not actually be in the tough love dimension.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's certain types of, at least in movies, where you have like a gala and a bunch of people getting together to talk about how they're going to help the poor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of disparaging of the poor that's happening there. Like
helpless people. Okay. Yeah.
They can't help themselves.
Right.
They need us, all these different things.
Right.
Which is one, victimizing the poor, and it's also like an ego thing for all these people who are, and I feel like the whole mentality is very disastrous. And I think there's like part of it is it's couched in the feeling of like, oh, we want to help the poor, but it's also a very destructive attitude. Okay,
all right, that's a good example, right? Yeah, I mean, tough love is also a good example, but I feel like I don't know, this one's easier to relate to. For example, engaging in like supportive endeavors, but in a manner that degrades the poor, right?
Yeah.
Another one is, we have to also remember, by the way, that if we're going with yesterday's approach, this is not limited to a poor person in terms of like money, so like it could be anyone who's in a degree a lesser state. So I think also virtue signaling, I think is a modern way that people do that is they will, in order to make themselves look like they are, in line with the correct values, they'll like for example, like a lot of white people who will sympathize with the plight of like we have to call them Latinx because Latino is offensive, and like meanwhile the people who they're actually talking about are like, what are you doing? Like you're just, you're coming in to save us from our offense that we're supposedly having, so virtue signaling. Or I had another example as well. I will include the tough love because I think that if you are expanding this to other people who are experiencing some sort of failure, then that is an approach of like, if I'm harsh with them, then that'll spur them to rise up or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
And I think it also that works well with the Greek sieve of humble.
Yeah.
Because you should be treating them with humility.
Okay.
And so
that's
it's
interesting.
Pairing humility with the
Okay, so I mean, I see the idea that you should treat them with humility, but this seems to be casting them as being humble, like the recipients. Yeah.
How is virtue signaling buzz?
Because what you're doing, the official term for it is like called the white savior complex. White savior complex. I think that's a thing. Yeah. A white savior complex is a critical term used to describe a white person who's portrayed as rescuing, uplifting, or liberating non-white people, So let's say all of the people who are who have the just the gut reaction, free Palestine, like that kind of that kind of thing. And in order to do that, you're doing similar to what Sean was saying, is the charity thing of and you're also implicitly saying that I am the one who's saving them. I'm better. Yeah.
So maybe arguing again on that humble point, which is that if the inclination then is to look at these people as less than you, but if you see them as humble people, then you're viewing them in a positive light.
I think now I don't buy the idea, but even though you're reading it, in other words, what if they're not humble? Ascribing a midah to them, I think is the part that I'm having a hard time with. If they don't actually have that midah. Now, here's what I would be open to. If you could, and I don't know if this is a legitimate move, if you can learn anav as a synonym for the lowly, then it's suggesting that by being mechonin to them, then you are recognizing that, then I'd be open to that, but not actually going so far as to ascribe the positive midah of humility to them. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, Isaiah.
Yeah, I have another approach. Are we ready for
that? Let's work on this just a little bit more. Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah, so how is he supposed to be acting?
Right, yeah. That's what I was going to say. What we have going for us now is that the subject of the pasuk is, what is the subject of this pasuk? So the subject of this pasuk is how to treat the poor. Okay, slash humble. We'll keep it ambiguous for now, right? So this guy, the guy in the first half is, I think it fits in with the chote thing, where it's he genuinely is trying to help them, but in doing so, he's disparaging them, and that is actually hurting them. What would be the mechonin? That is the opposite of this.
See, for me, it's when they view these people as lesser people, and then therefore then they start taking away all their power because they're not powerful enough to help themselves, so we need to help them.
Right.
That it ends up creating people who can't help themselves and disempowers them.
Yeah.
And so the person needs to help them help themselves instead of taking control.
Right.
And there's a graciousness in that, but it's...
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, that is definitely in line with halacha also, in that the highest form of tzedakah, or one of the highest forms of tzedakah, is you give them a job, so that they can support themselves instead of just supporting them, Yeah. Okay, let's leave it on the side burner, not the back burner. Okay, Isaac was next actually before Isaiah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a different idea.
Yeah.
I think not linked to the previous pasuk.
Yeah.
Although it could be. So I'll start with the second half.
Okay.
I think it's saying that someone who I think it's about like not engaging in like some sort of subjective value system.
Okay.
But I'm reading it as enough and not
Mhm.
So someone who shows favor to anavim means that they're not, listening to like, people like, it's like boasting about like, whatever positive qualities they have. They're thinking about what's actually who are like actually good, and showing favor to them. And so someone who does that is praiseworthy.
Okay.
So the first half is someone who is disparaging his fellow, because that's how they can like get ahead in that wherever the subjective value system is, and saying that person's a chote.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'll write it and then I'll opine. Okay. So the second half is talking about someone who relates to others in an objective value system, with an objective value system. Consequently, when he sees someone who is humble, he will like be gracious to them accordingly, because they have an objectively like good quality. Okay. The first half is talking about someone who operates in a subjective value system, and he'll be willing to disparage his fellow in order to get ahead. Yeah. So I hear that. To me, it strikes me. I'm not convinced that this pasuk. I feel like it's like not what the pasuk is saying. I'm not convinced that I see this as like emanating from the pasuk. Not that I disagree with the idea, but yeah, I do like the piece though of the Baz L'Re'ehu as in an effort to like win the rat race. That part I like, because that would explain why it's highlighting Re'ehu and why it's like like why a person would be Baz. And I think from there you can get this idea: if a person is operating in the world of bizui and kavod, that is often a subjective value system. So I'm with you there.
Yeah.
The mechonin anavim, I think the problem for me is the anavim seems overly specific and the mechonin seems overly specific. Like if you cover up the second half of the pasuk and you said, what would the second half be based on the way that you're learning the first half? I would say that it is talking about someone who gives kavod to tzaddikim, right? Like meaning someone who like honors those who deserve honor or something like that. Being gracious does imply, whether you say it implies like an actual giving of goods, it does imply like a flow of like
doing
something, and so to me that doesn't quite correspond with the first half. And then anavim, you could pull a Meiri and say that when it talks about anav, then anava is the root of all good midos and gaiva is the root of all bad midos, but it still is like, it seems forced. Yeah. So that's what I say about that.
By the mechonin than the
okay.
Anav, but
yeah,
because I feel like Anav is in a certain way is the opposite of this quality.
Yes. Yeah. So that if the Anav were similar to what I said to John, if Anav were describing the mechonin, then I would agree with you. But it's describing the recipient of the chen.
Yeah, well, then you say the person who has the proper relationship to this will see someone who is an Anav and like appreciate that. But
I think that's why my problem with the anavim stands on its own, which is why are we focusing? I mean, this is another question we didn't ask. Okay, which is where is this part here? Yeah, kind of an obvious question. Shouldn't you be mechonin to everyone? right? Not just the Navim. So if it's talking about Aniyim, fine. So then being choni to the Aniyim, if it's giving graciously, yeah, you don't give graciously to the rich, But if it's talking about like being gracious towards the humble, why only towards the humble? Like be gracious, yeah. So, okay, Isaiah, you're up. We got 2 half ideas, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say that this pasuk, which has the creative sieve, is teaching you one idea that's like pasha and one idea that's like a little bit more of a chiddush. So in terms of aniyim, I think it's kind of like in the more obvious realm that like if you don't give to aniyim, then you're over. Like you're supposed to give tzedakah to aniyim, and like Hashem dictated that. And if you don't do that, you're going against Hashem's will.
Yeah.
And people who do give tzedakah to aniyim, so they're living in line with the kind of like what Isaac said, they're living in line with reality. Like that's what how Hashem set up the world. Like aniyim need tzedakah, so giving to them that's how you live like the good life, ashraf, like because you're in line with reality.
Right.
Fine, but the chiddush is in terms of anavim. That anavim need a similar treatment to aniyim.
Okay.
That like a person, if you scorn an anav, like they don't have like a certain type of like draw to where like you're gonna feel like you have to treat the anav right, otherwise they're going to like, I don't know, snap at you or something like that. They're humble, like the right thing to do is to like treat them with a certain like, it's like sort of giving, like it's a certain type of giving where like you're treating them with more than like what you feel like you have to treat them, like more nicely than you feel like you have to.
Okay, right. In other words, because you can get away with treating them in less than a nice way, then people do that. People do take advantage of that. I won't say who, but I once taught with a real anav, like someone a coworker of mine, and I remember our secretary would always say like the kids just take advantage of him, because of his anava. Like there are like teachers who get walked all over because they can't discipline, but then there are people who just like by their virtue, like are not going to get riled up if someone like speaks disrespectfully to them or something like that, and like that could be taken advantage of. Okay, I really like that freak-sieve approach. Okay, let me
I want to add a little bit more to what I was saying.
Sure.
Is that the reason it's ashrav for the anav is because the anav is a person who is living like truthfully, like you're supposed to be an anav, like the ideal person is an anav. So treating them like in this kind of way is sort of like what Hashem has in mind. Like that's the ideal.
Okay, good. So the Pashut idea is that people can get away with mistreating the poor, but the proper approach is to give graciously to them, because they deserve that in line with justice. Okay, the more esoteric idea is that people can also get away with mistreating the humble, because the humble will not retaliate. But since they are objectively good, see, this is like a more organic thing than I think what you were getting at, but gets to the same place, like in terms of like the result, like this flows from the second half.
Yeah.
And it's possible we could combine the two, but I
was thinking that we maybe try to use this to
but they are objectively, but since they are objectively like what a human should be, they do deserve higher treatment, and if you do that, then you will be praiseworthy and happy. I might be injecting this into what you're saying, but because you're like not only doing justice, but like, I guess, venerating someone for a quality that will influence in a way that will influence you. in a way that will perfect you. Yeah. Okay. I want to, because we only have 10 minutes, I want to just state a partial idea as well. And then I want to go to the Meiri and the Malvin. So I think there's a simple idea here with Aniyim that it's talking about two people who give tzedakah. And this is an open halacha, that if you give tzedakah, it doesn't matter how much you give, but if you give in a degrading way, then you're chote. And if you give even a little bit in a gracious manner, which means a manner, I mean, I could read the halacha itself if I know where it is. Let me just try to find it because I should read the halacha. It's going to be probably in the last parak of Matnos Aniyim. Let's see. Yeah. Yud Dalad. Kol hanosin tzedakah al ani b'sefer panim ra'os. If someone gives to an ani with a harsh or mean face, upana kavush b'karka, or he's like avoiding making eye contact. Afilu nasan elef zuvim. Even if he gives him 1,000 gold pieces. Ibid zechusa o hifsida. He loses his zechus, or destroys it, whatever, vice versa. Ella nosin lo b'sefer panim yafos u'v'simcha. He should give it to him with a cheerful face and with joy. Umis onin imo al tzarason. He should empathize with him on his plight. Shneemar imlo bechisi lekashe yom agma nafshi le'evyon. Eov, when he was talking about his own good quality, says, if I didn't cry for the one who's having a bad day, if my soul was not anguished for the impoverished. Umadaber lo b'tachanunim unechamos. And he should speak with in a manner of I don't know what tachanunim here means here. I mean from chen though, graciousness, and nechamos and comfort. Shneimar says v'lev almon aranin. I forgot what aranin means. It's a weird word there. Yeah. Right. I think that's yeah. So that's what I mean by in terms of the treating them graciously. So how you spin that into a Mishlei idea of of a chiddush there, that's that should be developed. But I think that's the subject of the pasuk if you go with Aniyim. Yeah. I think it just fits too smoothly into the pshat to not be the pshat. Okay. All right. So let's look at the Meiri, who combines the two. Meiri says, Gam l'reihu yisane rash v'ove asher rabim baz l'reihu choteu mechonin anavi mashrav. Gam elu ladati devekim. In my opinion, these two are connected. Amar ki minhag olam lisno as a rush. The minhag olam is to hate the poor person. Vafilu mi shahaya re'ehu mi kedem. Even someone who used to be your fellow, your peer, yisna'ehu v'yarchikehu v'daluso. Then you will hate him and distance him in his poverty. And all the more so people who you didn't have that similar relationship with. With the rich, it's the opposite. Shiarbu ohavav v'af ha'acherim, that he will increase his loved ones, even others, meaning even strangers. And so all the more so if someone was friends with you beforehand, then if you get rich, then they'll like you even more. This is saying it's a bad midah. Okay, so I think that's basically what we said yesterday. Okay. Baz l're'ehu chote, im chote mitzad ha-mitzvah, if he sins in mitzvah terms, okay, footnote 12, v'hafta l'recha kamocha, v'chata miloshan avera, umitzad okay, fine. So in other words, if you violate v'hafta l'recha kamocha, im chote b'kavanaso lachshov daluso shiavo mitzad psiuso, or if you sin with intent, thinking that his poverty came to him because of his foolishness. That's the tough love thing that Sean was saying, right? It's you gotta tell these people to, take responsibility for themselves, not in the positive way you were saying, but you treat them in a way that says that, if we support these people on welfare, then they're just going to become parasites, that kind of thing.
I was thinking about this in terms of conversations about student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
And right. Or if someone's asking for money to help pay back their student loans.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe it was a mistake for them to take out, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt.
Yeah.
But now they're in this situation.
Right.
And
yeah.
They're not going to be able to get out.
That's a good example. Yeah. V'ulai hadalus lezeh chitas elokimhu. Maybe this guy's poverty is chitas elokim, which means fear of God, which I assume that is a mashal for punishment. I don't know. V'osher lezeh matas elokim. And and the wealth that this guy has is a gift of God. Okay, the gist I'm getting from this is from that is like, maybe it's not because of his poverty. Maybe it's just because like that's the way of the world. Some people are rich and some people are poor. Like that's there are a lot of pesukim in Mishlei about that. Like I forgot what it is in Hebrew, but the poor person and the rich person, Hashem made them both. And the meforshim there say there's like cycles. There's like economic cycles, or like you could be born into a rich family and someone else could be born into a poor family. That doesn't mean that you are poor because of your decisions. That's just how things go.
Oh, I thought this person is deciding not to give the person because they're like, oh, it's just because the result of his bad decisions, or like it's a punishment from Hashem or a reward.
Oh, you mean this is part of the reasoning of the guy?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
He's like, oh yeah, like maybe this guy deserves it.
I'm actually not sure how to read it. I don't know if the ulai is a continuation of the kavana or not. Okay. Umachonin anavim ratalam aniyim ushvalim derech klal. Okay, so good. He does say anavim is people who are generally poor and lowly in a generic manner, so not just in terms of money, I guess. Footnote 135. Anavim l'fi aksiv aniyim rinachmias ulai derech klal hakavana l'chol hanashim haniyim lo rak makirav. Okay, so maybe it means people who are poor in general, and not just your friend, not just your re'ehu. Ashrav v'koshkein la'osan chayu dvekav v'oavav mikedem. All the more so to people who you know from before. So what was that saying then? It's like he didn't finish like spelling out the
I think
implications.
The person who gives generously to the poor, and I think the second thing, the second sentence that he said was that it's not just, I think maybe it's even better if it's like when you're someone that you're close with becomes poor, because there you have a greater identification, so there's a stronger desire to pull away,
stronger natural desire, right? Yeah.
And also you're continuing to help them has an even greater impact, because at that time when they were experiencing other people falling away, having someone who's staying close and they can rely on.
Right. I think this is actually much simpler than we're imagining. I mean, everything you're saying is true, but I think in terms of the way he's interpreting it, pasuk Yud Daled is pointing out the phenomenon of the bad midah, and then pasuk Chaf Aleph is pointing out how that expresses itself in bad decision and good decision. So the fundamental idea is yesterday's idea that you should not treat people differently just based on their socioeconomic status. And it's even worse if like you were friends with them beforehand and then now you hate them, or if you weren't friends with them and then now you love them, and therefore you should guard against this tendency to be mavaza them, and you should, strengthen the tendency to like give tzedakah to them even if you don't identify with them anymore. Yeah, so I don't think that's like a tremendous chiddush beyond what we said yesterday. I mean, yesterday was a chiddush. Yeah. Let's look at the Malbim. I actually want to look at the Malbim. Gam l're'ehu yisani rash, baz l're'ehu chote, amar hagam shehateva hu she'ahava ti'eh ben hadomim, even though by nature likes like, right? We see the opposite, that the poor person hates his fellow poor person. As ashir, and he loves the ashir. So this goes against the principles of chachma. I don't know. I know he uses the term principles of chachma to mean stuff that is like you get through. I don't want to make a judgment on this. Let's jump ship. He uses chilukei chachma in a very technical way, and I don't want to speculate. Okay, Meiri derech nister. Yedua shahayelad miskin sanui l're'ehu. Okay, this is what I was saying yesterday, that the poor youth is hated by his fellow. So the Yetzer Hara Yetzer Tov is hated by his fellow, the Yetzer Hara. Okay.
Not by his fellow Yetzer Tov.
Yeah. Halavai, we had two Yetzer Tovs, only on Shabbos.
Someone else's.
Someone. Yeah. No, this is within the person. Yeah. The Ohave Hamelech Ha'ashir. So he does pull the king move. The friends of the rich king are many. Okay, that's the Yetzer Hara. The Efshar Shekivin Ba'amro Gam L'Re'ehu. It's possible when it says Gam L'Re'ehu, Klumar L'ktsas chelkei hanefesh. It means the other components of the soul. Meaning like the he says here shechameshes hachushim hem sibos hataibos hamoshkos hanefesh lebakashos hamosros v'tainuk. So the five senses are the causes of desires, not the it means like they like awaken the desires, and they pull the soul towards the seeking of excess and pleasure ad shisavuhu hamisa gumur ha'avon, until they cause death. It's promising about this that this person is a sinner. If you are gracious to the estate of the Yeled, of the Yeter Tov, this is what Chazal call Anavim, or what the pesukim call Anavim. Ashrav v'ashrei chelko. So then you got a good portion and you're happy. Okay, so he continues it on. So what is this saying then? Can we get anything out of this? So he's going to say that you're going to have a natural hatred towards the Yeter Tov, right? By the Yeter Hara. We should be gracious to it. Yeah, I don't know what to get out of it. I got to go now.
Yeah, I think that's a principle that people naturally that naturally